Colorado loses after building up a 29-point lead. Coach Prime has been in athletics pretty much his whole life, and he said he's never been part of a game like this where Stanford just comes storming back. I still feel like I'm processing what happened out here at Folsom Field.
Yeah, I felt like he was too in the post-game press conference. He said, "This is tough for me. I've never been a part of something like this." And I will say right off the bat, I want to give him a lot of credit because he kept saying it like, "I'm trying to keep my composure here." He did a great job because we've seen some coaches go off, at times like that, and this would have been the one. And I think when people were wondering about this team, like, what's Deion going to be like after losses? This is the type of game I think they would have expected him to kind of go off and flip out, and he didn't. I give him a lot of credit. He had pretty good composure for what just transpired out there tonight. But that was stunning. That was total dominance in the first half of that football game, and the second half was. I couldn't believe what happened because how much they dominated both sides of the ball in the first half, and then Stanford, completely different team in the second half, and totally dominated the Buffs.
Ashton Daniels was looking like a Heisman candidate in the second half, and we've seen some big comebacks by other teams in our time covering this program. Obviously, the Oregon State game here at Folsom Field, and then you were out at Kansas when they had that big comeback. Yeah. Any comparisons to draw there? The big difference, obviously, is that the future of CU football is still very bright, and tonight is going to be very difficult for CU fans to stomach. But it doesn't change the fact that this is a program that's headed in the right direction. Whereas those previous times, it kind of spelled the end of a head coach here in Boulder. But just from the game itself, it had a similar feel of things snowballing quickly and just not being able to get back. The momentum in the football game.
Yeah, I thought it was very similar, and more similar probably to that Oregon State game here, maybe because it was at home, but they totally dominated the first half against Oregon State, and one thing that happened in the second half of that Oregon State game was, they switched quarterbacks, but they got their passing game going, and CU couldn't stop it. Well, that's what happened here tonight, is they didn't switch quarterbacks, but, they got their passing game going, and CU could not stop it, and even Travis Hunter, was the guy that was on, I can't pronounce
number 13.
Yes, can't pronounce his name. I apologize, number 13. But he was on him most of the night, and it was Travis that was getting burned a lot tonight, and so that was stunning. So it was similar in that regard, and there was the pass game and shredding CU's secondary in both of those games, and backup quarterbacks. Technically, Ashton Daniels was the backup tonight because he didn't start this game. He's been a starter most of the season, but hasn't started the last two games. We've seen backup quarterbacks have some fun against the Buffs here as well at times. But that was pretty stunning. That's up there with Oregon State. And we were talking coming down. To me, this might even be worse than that because of the firepower we've seen on this offense. And maybe the most stunning aspect to me tonight was that CU's offense didn't do more in the second half to kind of counteract some of those scores from Stanford.
In the first half, Travis Hunter was really good as a receiver and ended up with 2 touchdowns. Zay Weaver, 3 touchdowns tonight. Shedeur Sanders got to the 400-yard passing mark. But it looked like at halftime that, they were going to get those numbers and then be able to rest the starters. That's just how crazy how things flipped in the second half.
Yeah, and they didn't have a good drive at the end of the first half, and you thought, okay, well, whatever, you're still 29-0. But Coach Prime, when he started his press conference, or he came in the press conference, he said he saw some complacency starting with that drive, and when he got in the locker room at halftime, he saw complacency on the team. He didn't like what he saw in the locker room at halftime, and that carried over in the second half. And so, it was not. Taking the foot off the gas, I guess, a little bit, you could use that term, started late in the first half. And they did rack up big numbers. And, you look at offensively, another, Travis and Xavier were both over 100 yards rushing and 100 yards receiving. Shedeur had a really nice game rushing the ball early in this game, but then all the sacks piled up again. And so some of the same things happened in the second half. And Stanford's coaches have adjusted to them. And they made a lot of the changes. I thought Colorado got out coached in the second half.
Yeah. Defensively, Trevor Woods surprises us and plays linebacker tonight. We did a whole analysis video talking about linebackers, and that wasn't even on our radar. So that was a surprising change. And Coach Prime said that wasn't just necessarily a matchup with Stanford, that he kind of likes that he's selfless and willing to do what's best for the team. That tells me they liked going into tonight their safeties a lot and maybe didn't like the linebacker plays quite as much. And you asked about Juju Mitchell. He didn't really want to get into specifics. Said you ask Jawan, what happened there. So I think you can read between the lines and know that that's probably a disciplinary situation. What happened to the defense in the second half?
I have no idea. I mean, I will say they've got real issues at linebacker. You know, when you're this deep in the season and you don't really have injuries at that spot and you're moving a safety into linebacker, that says more about the linebacker play than the safety play. You know, and they've tried so many guys there. Marvin Ham has played some good football, but he didn't get in there tonight, really. Brendan Gant started last week. He didn't get in there tonight. You got the issue with Mitchell. Bentley, I thought, played okay, but, you know, you've got guys that have been in at linebacker, and so when you're moving Trevor Woods in there, there's some issues there, and you know, I'm not saying that caused it tonight, but I mean that just speaks to there's issues on this defense, and there were times tonight too where I mean, how many times did they have 12 men on the field? Where substitution issues with that defense, and there were things like that, and you know, Travis had a bad penalty where he you know shoved one of the receivers and got that extra penalty, and so there was things like that, discipline things. 17 penalties overall tonight. I mean. That's offense and defense, but a lot on defense.
I expected Colorado to be 4-3 going into the bye week. Didn't play out exactly how we expected. Obviously, going into today, and especially at halftime, thought it would be 5-2. How difficult is this going to be, you think, for Colorado to get over this? How much do you think this could hurt this team coming on the other side of the bye week?
Yeah, I think that's the big question going into this. I think, you know, Coach Prime mentioned there's guys in this locker room that don't love football, and he goes, I love this game. I'm passionate about it. I want them to match that. And that's where, you know, this is maybe speaks to a bigger thing, but where, you know, people are critical of, like, great players don't make good coaches because they get frustrated with people not matching what they have. I think Coach Prime is different in that regard, but he has that high expectation. He doesn't see that out of this team, and they've got to find it over the next 5 weeks because, frankly, this was the easiest game in the second half of the schedule, and you just coughed it up. And so to try to win 2 more games now, you look at that schedule, it's like that's tough. I mean, you know, 3 games on the road. You got 4 ranked teams out of the 5 coming up, and the one that's not ranked is Arizona, which has looked really good at times, and Arizona's played well here at times. So they've got to find something over the next 2 weeks. Coach Prime said it's never a good time for a bye. You want to go in on a high note, but I think it might be critical this next week. They got to find that again. I mean, they've got to find that spark because otherwise those last 5 games are, you know, not going to be good for this team.
On the bright side, Shedeur Sanders is still their quarterback. Mm-hmm. Travis Hunter, even though he didn't play a great game, especially defensively today, is back in the mix now. So it's going to be an interesting, you know, I guess it kind of feels like the second half of the season for us because of the bye week. It's still bright future around here, but again, this is just a really hard one to stomach.
Yeah, this was a reminder that this is not the year that they're playing for, right? That there's some things that they're still building on this program that, you know, it's not going to turn overnight. A lot of things have turned overnight, but the whole thing is not. This was a reminder of that. They've got a lot of work to do, and they've got 5 more weeks. It comes fast, right? I still can't believe we're 7 weeks into the season, but it's going to come fast. I mean, they got a lot of work to do over the next 2 weeks before they go to UCLA.
All right, shocking loss for the Buffaloes here at Folsom Field on Friday the 13th. Actually ended on Saturday morning, I guess. But we'll be back with more analysis during the bye week.